Okay, so here we are for the Fourth and Gold podcast. Going to chat about the divisional rounds coming up this weekend, down to the final 8 teams, 4 games this week. So let's kick off straight away with the Saturday game at 9:30 UK time. We've got Houston Texans at the Baltimore Ravens. Interesting game coming up. So let's kick off with CJ Stroud's number one fan. Jay, what are your views on this game?
Just a very quick side note before we begin, because Paul's wearing the hat. I have a message for the most winning franchise in NFL's history with 6 Super Bowls. Pittsburgh Steelers, do whatever it takes to get Mike Tomlin re-signed. He's got 1 year left. Do not let him walk out the deal. Don't let him walk out the door for nothing. For nothing. That would be insane in itself. But just don't let him walk out the door. This is a great coach. Give him whatever he wants. Like, I think he's starting to get fed up of not having a team that can really compete. And he doesn't need to be ultra stacked to compete, as we've seen. But just give him a bit more, okay? Because the narrative around he can't get it done with a lot of these casuals is pissing me off. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that.
A great coach.
Well said.
Who does
well
your
said.
draft, Paul? Is it Tomlin that decides the players that are drafted, or is it the GM that has the final say? Well,
so the official word is it's a committee, the GM, Tomlin, and the owner. But anecdotally, if you hear people who are on the inside, the connected people, they say that the owner is extremely involved. Not like an obvious Jerry Jones kind of involved, but behind the scenes, Kenny Pickett was put upon the coach. He was told, like, this can't be proven, but they were told, like, oh, you've got to draft this kid. Like, he's our kid. He's from down the hall, goes to Pitt, plays for the Pitt Panthers. And that's one that we've heard of. Like, there are going to be many more that the owner is definitely involved in. But yeah, Tomlin, I don't think Tomlin's that heavily involved. I think it's the GM.
That's whether he would want to stay any longer, because it must be quite disheartening. Like, you've got a coach who's got them individuals, which is a team that isn't as good as this. Isn't what we expect for the Steelers, right? We don't expect them just to be happy with making the playoffs. You expect the Steelers to be in AFC championship games. You expect them to be in Super Bowls. You expect them to be winning Super Bowls. And that's not even been in the equation for quite a while now, probably since Big Ben's third to last year, when you had Le'Veon and 8-4 together.
That crazy Jacksonville playoff game. I think that was the last team that could have won it all.
Yeah,
like they were stacked.
And is that the year when you had the touchdown that never was against the Steelers, where they gave it
the Patriots?
Touchdown. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Patriots.
Yeah, the Jesse James, where they've changed the rule. Like like Des Bryant, catch, no catch. Now it's break the play and it's a touchdown. And that would have been to be the 1 seed, not the 2 seed. But anyway, the Steelers, like, it's a deeper problem with personnel, and also not just personnel, it's coaching, because the coordinators they're a very loyal, stubborn franchise, and they will promote from within. So, it's next man up. Who's the assistant to the D coordinator, the offensive coordinator? And really now they're getting kind of found out. You really need to look at outside talent. These teams, we're talking like the last 8 in the NFL this year, they've got some exceptional coaches. Look at the Ravens within the division, what they do with the coaches. They're not happy, they'll make a change. The Steelers don't do that. And where are the Ravens and where are the Steelers? So yeah, but like Jay said, and extremely well said, Steelers fans, be very, very careful what you wish for, because Coach Tomlin, like he said, it seems to be getting pissed off with these questions about, your future and everything. And yeah, it could be a long, long time before Pittsburgh get back to even being 10-7 if you get rid of Tomlin. So yeah, by all means, keep Tomlin, keep him happy. But Ask him. Involve him. What do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want?
He doesn't want to be involved, but I would assume that he probably would like to be more involved in these decisions. And when you've got the likes of Belichick, Pete Carroll, I didn't realize Pete Carroll was the main decision maker in Seattle. I thought it was Schneider.
Yep.
Tomlin's done more than enough to deserve that opportunity.
Yeah. Don't make a stupid decision and go, right, we'll get a couple of ones, couple of twos, draft picks for Tomlin. Like, that would just be so dumb.
Yeah.
So dumb. So
not the Pittsburgh way, is it, either?
No.
So. Absolutely not.
We'll see. But yeah, so on to the Houston Texans Ravens. Jay, what are your thoughts?
Wow. I'm going to start with this. The Texans have existed since 2002. On Saturday, they won their 5th playoff game. That is now more than the playoff games that the Dallas Cowboys have won since 2002. So the team that claims to be America's team, you're not even Texas's team. I've got to say, like, I was blown away by CJ Stroud, and a lot of credit must go to Bobby Slowick, because the offensive game plan was excellent. I thought the flow of the offense, what they were calling, they just unhinged the Browns. I mean, the Browns in that first half defensively were terrible. I can't remember who it was. I think it was like a safety. I think his number was 33. The angle that I don't know what he was doing on that touchdown to Jordan, where Jordan's literally on the sideline and then he's like come across and there's another Texans receiver already guarded, and he's like, well, let me just double him just to make sure. And Jordan just ran past him for like an 80-yard touchdown. So there was a bit of bad Browns as well, but ultimately CJ Stroud, he made a ton of big plays in that game. And like, he made effortless throws. I mean, this week is a different test, I think, to the one that they had last week. I sort of said that I was happy that CJ Stroud and this young Texans team were getting that first playoff experience. No matter what happened, I just think that that's completely valuable to the next few years. But to win it, like, this team now has a taste for winning in the playoffs. And when you win something like that, you want to win more. I thought another thing I just want to say about last week's game, Laramie Tunsil, I know Rob is a big fan of his.
I was literally going to talk about him. Yep.
You can literally see why from this game. I mean, like, I know that Myles Garrett got doubled a lot, but there were times where Tunsil just handled him. Like, literally, the protection was very, very good in the passing game last week. There's still, I don't know, like, I'd say that the Browns contained the run game of the Texans. Like, it wasn't as we've seen it in recent weeks, where suddenly the Texans have got quite a decent rushing attack. It wasn't on show against the Browns. I think they held them to something like 75 yards, which pretty good in today's NFL. A name that we have not mentioned on this podcast before, Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah, had 4 tackles for loss. So I'll be interested to see what happens this week against the Ravens. As we know, they're a very good defensive unit. I think they are better than they can't show much worse than the Browns showed last week. That was not the Browns at their best. I think this Ravens defense is going to cause the Texans a lot more trouble. I've got a list here. The Ravens have 5 All-Pros this year. That's second most. First team, they had Lamar, Roquan Smith, and Kyle Hamilton. Second team, they had Patrick Queen and Mada Beast, Justin Madubuike. The Texans experienced their first home playoff game last week. This week, they're going to experience, well, CJ Stroud and the young crew are going to experience their first road playoff game in Baltimore. Baltimore have had 3 weeks off. This is dangerous for Baltimore because they were in this situation 3 or 4 years ago. They wrapped up the number 1 seed with a week to go. They rested their guys. And what happened in the divisional round? They got punched in the mouth by King Henry and the Titans, and they got dumped out. So I know that Lamar Jackson isn't going to want to repeat history twice. He has grown since then. He was really good then. That was unanimous MVP season. He's definitely grown. This offense has definitely evolved since then. And they're getting Mark Andrews back this week. I don't know where he features because Isaiah Likely has more than filled the gap in his absence. But you've got another weapon added to Zay Flowers, added to Odell Beckham Jr., the run game with Gus Edwards. And we might even see Dalvin Cook. I think you know where I'm going. I love the season that the Texans have had. I'm disgusted that CJ Stroud did not get second team All-Pro ahead of Dak Prescott. But it is what it is. Great season for the Texans. I said last week, I think they'll give a good showing, but I do think they will give a good showing against this Ravens team. But I'm rolling with the Ravens. I think that the defense is better. They'll be able to they'll be able to reduce the big plays that CJ Stroud had last week. And it pains me to say that as CJ Stroud's number 1 fan. Ravens 28, Texans 21. So Texans cover 9.5. Interesting. And I say, over the 43.5 over under.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we're not like looking at the Browns game at the weekend. It played out partly how I expected. Like I've said, I expected the Texans to win. I didn't expect it to be as comfortable as it was. My reason for the selection was the Browns secondary has been questionable for a while. We knew the front seven was strong, so the run wasn't really a concern of mine. But CJ Stroud was always going to light them up. Nico Collins again, another big game. And yeah, I don't have the same concerns with the Ravens secondary, unfortunately. So it's not a great matchup, I don't think, with the run stopping, the secondary, just the all-around defense that the Ravens have. Like it's a bit like the Steelers. You just know they're always going to have a solid defense year after year. They're coached up so well. Going back onto Laramie Tunsil and briefly on the Browns game, the O-line is a very, very good O-line that has gone sort of under the radar, I think. I don't think it gets anywhere near as much praise as the Cowboys O-line or the Eagles O-line was getting at times, and even the Browns O-line when everyone was healthy. Laramie Tunsil, I always remember when he got drafted out of college, he was the number 1 O-lineman, and the number 1 defensive player was Robert Nkemdiche. And he was literally the next big thing. Everyone wanted him. They said he could go straight to the NFL from high school. And Tunsil, when they went, I think it was the Under Armour game, and he said, give me anyone one-on-one and I'll block them. So Nkemdiche came in and he blocked Nkemdiche. And so from that moment, I've always loved his confidence. He's had some questionable years during his time in the NFL, but he seems to have found himself of late, and he's doing a great job protecting CJ Stroud's blind side. And you need that as a quarterback. The Texans are reminding me in the Browns game a lot of the Chiefs, where they were in their heyday in a way, where you know they're going to be throwing it. It's going to be in the air. They're running it a few times just to keep the defense honest, but they're not gonna beat you on the ground. And my concern against the Ravens is they're not going to be able to run it. I'm pretty confident with that, and I don't think they're going to have the time, because I trust Tunsil. Whether the whole line will be able to stop, whether it be Queen, whether it be Roquan Smith, I can't pronounce your favourite guy, the sack machine on the defensive line, Jay.
Madubuike.
Madubuike, there you go. The problem you've got with this Ravens team, it's a who's who. There are so many players that can make plays. And then even in the secondary, Hamilton is a pick machine. Incredible player, hits hard as well. He's sort of like a Pete Carroll player, because he loved a bit of height with his secondary as well, and he's quite a tall guy too, so he's hard to throw on. So all that being said, I think Lamar would have learned from the last mistake that they made against the Titans a few years back now. Not that he played terrible in that game, but he started off very slow, if I remember right, and then he finished off reasonably well. I see the Ravens coming out firing. I wouldn't be surprised if they scored on their first two drives, just to set the marker. Now, saying that, I wouldn't then be surprised if they took their foot off the gas, as they've done many times this year in the second half, and just don't put the Texans to bed. I see this being a one-possession game going into the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. I do think that the Ravens will just have too much. But I think nine and a half point spread is way too much. I think it's really disrespectful. If I'm D'Amico Ryans, and I'm sure he's done this, he's pinned that up on the locker room. This is what Vegas think we are: 9.5 point underdogs. Not even one score. We basically shouldn't be on the same field as this team. I don't view it that way. CJ Stroud can make anything happen. He is Harry Houdini with a football in his hand. I've loved watching him progress this year, because I thought he would be a flop. I thought he'd be exactly the same as the Panthers quarterback. And yeah, he's done amazing. I don't see them winning though. I can imagine this being a Justin Tucker field goal to win, probably by 3 or 4. They might be winning, and they just extend their lead towards the end. But I see the over coming in. Score, I'm going to go 27-24 Ravens. Over to you, Paul.
So I see it a little different to you guys. You guys have it relatively close. I don't. I think, what a wonderful story, by the way. I'm not taking away from the story. CJ Stroud and the Texans, they have done amazing to be here. Like, think of where they were and where they are. They're well ahead of schedule, and the future's really bright. However, they're going into Baltimore, and the Baltimore defense is going to show CJ Stroud all kinds of different looks and pressures and the disguised coverages that he's going to have to deal with. He went into Baltimore in his first start as a rookie in week 1 and played quite well, but he played quite well when the game was out of hand, and the Ravens just, like typical Ravens, they didn't put up stats. They didn't put up like loads of yards, but they just managed the game. They actually turned the ball over more than the Texans. They turned it over twice. The Texans did once, won the game 25-9. The Texans did not score a touchdown in the game. CJ Stroud threw for 240 as a rookie. Got a lot of praise because it was against the Ravens. So has enough changed for the score to change? I don't think it has. CJ Stroud is amazing, but the Baltimore defense is amazing. And Baltimore will be ready for this team. They will have looked. Now, a little side note to this game. Last week, the Browns were apparently the number 2 defense statistically. This is the number 1 defense. And like Rob said, they did not play well, the Browns, whatsoever. They got completely torched by the Texans. The Texans' strength is throwing the ball deep. One of the Ravens' big strengths is they don't give up the deep pass. They don't let you have the deep pass. So the only way I see the Texans even keeping this close is if they can run the ball. And I don't think they can. The Texans' run game is below average. The Ravens might not put up loads of yards. It might not look statistically like they've blown the Texans out, but in a Ravens kind of typical game, you'll look at the score in the third quarter and they'll be up by 17 points. That's just what they do. And the Texans, great story, but I don't think they're there yet. Maybe next year or the year after. Baltimore are still, like the guys have said, they're still kind of hurting from that Derrick Henry just pounding in the playoffs a few years ago. And even though the Ravens might not win the Super Bowl, but they're not losing to the Texans. I can't see it. I see the Ravens handling the Texans 31-17 Baltimore.
Hey, good stuff. Okay, so now going on to the late night game, Saturday. We've got Jay's San Francisco 49ers, the number 1 seed in the NFC, against the Green Bay Packers. No, yep, that's correct. Not Dallas, everyone. The Green Bay Packers, who absolutely schooled Dallas and Mike McCarthy last weekend. It'll be a bit more of a difficult matchup than I think you would have been hoping for. Jay, what are your views on this game?
Yeah, so first of all, I hope this is a lesson for the likes of Colin Cowherd that you can't say after 6 games that someone's a bust and that they should be moving on from a player, especially quarterback in his first year starting. But my, am I scared this week? Like this isn't what I was expecting, honestly. Like I know I picked the Packers to win last week, but if you told me this 5 weeks ago, divisional round, Packers at 49ers, no way I would have believed you. What we saw Sunday night, I've got to say, all credit to Matt LaFleur and his game plan. The game plan that they designed and executed was near perfect, I thought.
Yep.
And as you might have seen on my Instagram, what we saw wasn't Jordan Love. We saw Michael Jordan Love because he absolutely destroyed the Cowboys. And I know that there was that touchdown to the tight end where, the Cowboys gave zero coverage a new meaning. Like he was wide open for about 30 yards, literally 30 yards. But I watched the coach's film of this game yesterday, and some of the throws that Love made, it was special. It was special. Now, the Cowboys, their defense, I think we've found out, isn't as good as maybe certainly I, and I think you, Rob, thought it was. What I saw noticeably in the film was their front 7 is kind of small, right? They're lacking size. You can bully them. Like they kind of got bullied in the run game in this game. And what I did notice as well was a lot of the sort of big plays that the Packers had, they came on downs where the Cowboys just couldn't get home. And so Love was standing in the pocket. First read's not there. Second read's not there. And then just in time, that third read came open. And Love obviously delivered the throw that needed to be made. And that's how they got a lot, especially early in the game. That's how they got a lot of these 20, 25, 30-yard plays. it was because of that, because Dallas's front seven kind of just wasn't there, wasn't enough. The Cowboys, we know that they play a bit of zone. When they tried to play man, my goodness me, I underestimated this receiving core. Either that or the Cowboys with Gilmore up there in age, Bland, as we know, opportunistic, but not the best yet. He's still, very young. They had no answer for these routes, these cuts, the receiver's speed. They're coming up against a better defense this week, though, I think. And again, as we know with the Cowboys, they can't run the ball. So it's completely different this week with one of the best rushing attacks in the league. Dak had two interceptions, and they were both on slant routes. So the first one was on the outside. And all credit to Jair Alexander. That was a great grab. Really good. The second one, I think it was on 4th and 2. It was a slant to the slot. CeeDee Lamb was lined up in the slot. Cooks was next to him. They both run a slant. If he throws it to Cooks, it's probably a completion. He throws it to CeeDee Lamb, it's a pick six. This offense that they faced last week, as we've said all year, very basic. Shanahan's offense is far from basic. And they come up against a team that leads the league in all pros, 7 in total. And I'm going to list them for you, just so we know the personnel that they are facing this week. Number 1, Trent Williams, the best left tackle in the league. One of the best left tackles, in my opinion, to ever play, the dynamic player that he is. And he's confirmed he will be back next year, which was a nice surprise. George Kittle, again, good luck dealing with him. He will dominate you in the run game. He's pretty damn good in the pass game as well. Unanimous. Christian McCaffrey. What has been the Packers' Achilles heel? It has been stopping the run over the years. Have they improved in that area? Well, it'll be put to the test this week. Fred Warner. You look at Dallas's front 7. I'm looking at that second level at linebacker, especially inside linebacker. There ain't no Fred Warner there. Mm-hmm. And lastly, of the 5 first-team All-Pros, Kyle Patrick Juszczyk, for the first time, is All-Pro, given that fullback is now recognized. So you've got to deal with the 49ers offensive line, plus Kittle, plus Juszczyk. This is a different test this week, in my opinion. And then last of all, we had 2 second All-Pros. Brandon Ayuk, very difficult to get first-team All-Pro, given the receiver performances this year. You've got your work cut out with Brandon Ayuk. And, Deebo Samuel isn't All-Pro. He's another one you're going to have to deal with this week. There's a lot to deal with this 49er team, far more than the Cowboys. And our last All-Pro was Charvarius Ward, who was second-team All-Pro. I, biasedly maybe, kind of felt he should have been first-team over Sauce. I respect Sauce. I know that Sauce isn't getting thrown to as much this year, given the reputation he's built. But Charvarius Ward has been very, very good since Hufanga tore his ACL. He stepped up, and suddenly the 49ers' weakness doesn't look as weak as it did. So all in all, this is the week that the 49ers could get caught cold. I think the 49ers have more chance of losing this week than they do if they advance to next week, because it's been 3 weeks off and you're playing a team that clearly is playing with a lot of confidence. They are red hot, let's face it. But at the end of the day, the 49ers do have the better team, I think. I hope this doesn't sound disrespectful, But I do actually think the Packers have the better quarterback, personally. Style-wise, and I'm not saying these guys are going to be these guys or, are these guys, but it feels to me like we're kind of seeing, in style at least, Aaron Rodgers versus Drew Brees at the quarterback position. I think both teams are going to put up points. I don't think the 49ers, as I continue to say, have the best defense this year. It's still very good, but it's not. You can definitely create problems for them. And the Packers like to throw deep early to unbalanced teams. But I think ultimately this game is going to come down to, can the Packers stop the run? And I say they can't. So Packers 24, 49ers 35. 49ers cover the 9.5 spread. And that means that it is over the 50.5 mark.
Okay. So there's a few points you mentioned that the first one I picked up on, Jay, was when you mentioned about Fred Warner, where Dallas have no one like him in that linebacker core. You can definitely say that Dallas don't have anyone like a certain gravedigger on their front four either. Talking about the size, that's going to be a bit harder to run on than whoever you've got on the front line. You got Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, etc. Only
I can't
Lawrence
name their interior defensive linemen.
Because they're both on the outside, aren't they? Obviously, Parsons does sometimes go up the inside, but yeah, I don't know. Their run stopping was shocking. See, you mentioned so many good players, and you mentioned Deebo Samuel. Like, Deebo Samuel was the most, outside of McCaffrey, the most electric player you've got. And we've seen in games this year just how ridiculous he can be. And I expect him during this playoff run to have a similar run to what he did when he got to the playoffs last time when it was in Miami. I hope so, because I love watching him play when he's like that. Him and Jamar Chase that year were just electric. Then secondly, two players we didn't even mention. So all of them all pro players, not even to mention Bosa, not even to mention Chase Young, and there are still other players, Greenlaw,
Greenlaw.
These are amazing players.
Like I disrespected him now.
They're amazing players that we've not brought up. Like, all of them could get into most teams, if not any team in the NFL. So this is a different kettle of fish. Going on to the Green Bay Dallas game briefly, the first drive was key in the whole game. Don't know if you remember it. I think it was 2nd and long. And on 3rd down, it was an incompletion, and Dallas got called for, it was either a PI or a holding. I can't remember which one it was, but that would have been a 3 and out. And imagine how that could have just changed the whole vibe and the momentum of the game. Instead, Green Bay drove down the length of the field and put up 7 straight away. And I just felt like at key moments throughout the whole first half, Dallas just kept shooting themselves in the foot, whether it be penalties, whether it be on offense. Before that second pick that Dak had, I swear, like the 3 plays before that, he went to CeeDee Lamb. He basically was like, I am going to force it to you because I haven't got it to you yet, and we need to get it to you. And even the cameras could see it, because the camera just kept on showing CeeDee Lamb, Dak, and them two talking together. And literally then all of a sudden you see him force it through to CeeDee Lamb again, pick, done. Another touchdown going the other way. So from being potentially, what was it at the time, like 7, could have made it 17 or 4, what was it, 21-7 going into the halftime. Dallas got the ball back, could have been 21-14. All of a sudden it's a different game. So just little things changed that whole game. And yeah, Dallas didn't run. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't stop the run, and they couldn't stop the big plays. I look at this San Francisco team. You made a great point. Like, big up Jordan Love. Like, all at the beginning of the year, before the year started, and even through the first few weeks, I was closer to Colin Coward's view than what most people are now, and I'll hold my hands up, I was wrong. He impressed me. That was the first game I've actually watched all the way through just of Green Bay, like without not just looking at highlights. And man, does he look cool under pressure. He looks like he's got all of the throws. Even when he knows he's going to get hit, he completes them on target. And yeah, all of a sudden, that decision to draft him looking quite good. How often were we slagging him off? I think all of us were. Give Rodgers an offense, give him a wide receiver. Why are you drafting in your first pick a quarterback? Well, they've looked a bit further down the line than maybe Rodgers would have wanted, but as a GM, as an owner, maybe they've made the right decision there, because now they've got very good young players around Jordan Love, as we found out on, what was it? I can't remember what day it was. Was it Saturday or Sunday they played? But anyway, going on to this game, you mentioned it, Jay. It was literally the third read so many times that he made big plays to keep drives going. He's not going to get time to get to the third read against this San Francisco front seven. That's the difference that I see. The secondary of San Francisco has some question marks, but I still think they're better than the Dallas secondary. The front seven for me are miles ahead of Dallas, though, because again, Green Bay were thinking, right, we stopped Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, and there's not really anyone else going to get you. You've got 5 or 6 players comfortably that could get you with San Francisco. You're not going to be able to double them all. So yeah, if you don't get your first or second read, you throw it away or you get hit. And I imagine he will get sacked quite a few times. So yeah, and then going on to the offense, Kyle Shanahan, as you said, one of the best. I think they've got the best run game in the league. Christian McCaffrey is just never surprises me anymore. His over-under for rushing should be about 110, but it's probably going to be somewhere in the early 90s or high 80s. I don't know what his over-under is. But if it's anything less than 100, go with the over. Because San Francisco won't get blown out. They will be running a lot. They're going to be fresh. And I love this team. I think it's their destiny. I hope it's their destiny. I see them covering the spread. I know Jay's getting nervous. Don't like all this praise coming in, but I feel they've had the season started off so bright. Then they had, what was it, the 3 weeks, or was it 3 or 4 weeks where they lost and just didn't look great. But I think that helped them. I've said this before in the podcast. I think that period has really helped them sort of find themselves going forward. And I think Shanahan's learned a lot too. I think it's going to be a great coaching contest, LaFleur against Shanahan, because LaFleur absolutely schooled McCarthy last week. It was embarrassing. It was one of them. If that was a boxing fight, then you could be certain the white flag, the towel would have been thrown in very, very early in that game. But yeah, I'm waffling on a bit now. So my view is San Fran cover this game. I see them winning. I'm not going to say reasonably comfy, because I think that's going to be disrespectful to Green Bay. Green Bay are very similar to the Texans. I actually think Green Bay have a few more pieces than the Texans right now. But there are a lot of similarities there. I think it's just a bit too early for them because of the team they're coming up against. If they were playing Detroit or Tampa Bay, I would like Green Bay to win. And if you just look back to the beginning of the year, if I would have told you, Jay, divisional round, you've got Green Bay, Tampa Bay, and Detroit as the other 3 teams in the NFC, you would have bitten my hand off, right, to get that Final 4. So San Fran win. I'm going to go with 38-17. And obviously the over.
A whooping.
I believe it's going to be a bit of a kick-ass, yeah. I'll be staying up for this game, so I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a whooping, but again, I don't want this to sound like I'm hedging my bets because I'm sticking with my score prediction and my pick. But it wouldn't surprise me if Love made it a closer contest. I don't think he will, because I don't think he's going to get time to get to his third read. But over to you, Paul.
So, yeah, you touched on it. So, Jay, like 1994, the last San Francisco Super Bowl win. And it is, I don't want to say it's set up perfectly, but you couldn't, like Rob said, you couldn't ask for a better hand to be dealt to you than you've got right now. And even this year, we said it was in the NFC. It was San Francisco, it was Philadelphia, and it was Dallas. 2 of them are gone. So it's over to you guys. Green Bay, they can win this game, but it is all on Jordan Love to win this game for them. And San Francisco, in my opinion, have way too much talent defensively to let that happen. They're not extremely well coached defensively, like we've said earlier this year, because the defensive coordinator doesn't seem to be able to design blitz packages. He just goes, well, we've got 4 dudes, we'll get home. Well, no, just be a bit creative. And they would need that this week against Jordan Love, because give him time and he will dot you up. But yeah, where I see this game going is that San Francisco's offense is elite and Green Bay's defense is not elite. And I think you're going to score too many points. I think it's a great, like with CJ Stroud and the Texans, it's a great story. They've done extremely well to get to this point. If we go back to Thanksgiving, they were done. The Packers. They went into Detroit, beat the Lions on Thanksgiving, and they've kind of gone on a bit of a tear since then. But their defense is not going to be able to hold up against the 49ers. And the 49ers losing that game so recently to the Ravens, I think, is a good thing now for them, because it showed them, it kind of showed you guys the way. Like, don't put the game in Brock Purdy's hands. Like, just have a very balanced game plan. And Green Bay were able to beat the Cowboys. The Cowboys could not adjust in game to what was happening. And that is not going to happen with San Francisco. If Jordan Love does put up some points early, you know that they're going to make some adjustments. The 49ers, they'll change up something. They're a bit vanilla in their coverages, the 49ers, but they've got too much talent, I think, for the Packers. And I think this is the end of the road for Green Bay. Great story, but I think it's the end of the road. But the future is extremely bright with all the young talent that they do have. I see San Francisco 31, Green Bay 20. So I think I'm just over, and I think I've just got them covering.
Yep. Nice one. Okay, so now on to the 8 p.m. game, UK time, Sunday. Got Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Detroit Lions. Jay, who are you going with?
Not what I was expecting, I've got to say, but all credit to both teams, really. The Buccaneers, they handled a very bad Eagles team, and they didn't hold back. The Lions, that was a great game against the Rams. Like, it was there to be had for the Rams, really. They got a little bit conservative in that game. Like, just before halftime, there's a minute left. The Rams get the ball back with timeouts, and they kind of just let the clock die out there. And I'm thinking, you are behind. This is a playoff game. And then on that last drive, they were sort of like, well, we're going to run the ball, even though we're having success, in the air. 3rd and 1, ran it, holding penalty out of field goal range. And then the Lions get the job done. So these two teams met, I think, earlier in the year in Tampa. And that was the week. So after that game, I think they won 20-6. It was the week after that we all were questioning whether Jared Goff was playing at a top 5 level. He had some stumbles, but overall, you got to give the Lions huge amount of credit where they've come to. And one thing that I was really pleased to see as a neutral, shall we say, last week was no dumb aggressiveness, no fake punts in their own half, no going for 2 when it was unnecessary. The only thing they really did was maybe it was like the 2nd or 3rd drive. It's like 4th and 2 at the goal line. They go for it. They throw it to the all-pro Sam Laporta. That was a reasonable call, I'd say. So in this matchup, the Buccaneers, they specialize in stopping the run. The Eagles didn't have much success running the ball, but they had a fair bit of success with big plays in the air, more than they've had recently. So that tells you that the Buccaneers have kind of had trouble stopping the pass this year in general. It could be a quieter day in that sense for Big Dave Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't know though. This is as an elite a tandem at running back as you're going to find in the NFL right now. I love what they offer as a package. Even individually, they are great. But it could be more Jahmyr Gibbs sort of passing out the backfield because of this emphasis the Buccaneers put on stopping the run. But they don't want to put too much emphasis on this because the Lions have a plethora of weapons. They have first-team All-Pro Amon-Ra St. Brown. As I've said, second-team All-Pro Sam Laporta. Josh Reynolds went on a bit of a revenge game last week. We'll see if he follows it up this week. And then, of course, you've got the X factor that they are keeping under wraps a bit, Jameson Williams, who I think he had a 40-yard, 50-yard touchdown in Tampa this year. It's been a great run for Baker and this Buccaneers team. They have grinded away. I think Baker has shown this year that Tampa do have good quality weapons on offense, that we weren't really being told that story last year. Mike Evans didn't have a big game last week. He's going to need to have a big game this week. But I just don't see it being enough for the Buccaneers. I think the Lions, after sort of getting the monkey off their back, winning that first playoff game, I think they're going to want to win a second one. Apparently, it was like electric in there. Couldn't really tell from the TV. It's going to be even louder this week. I say Lions 31, Buccaneers 17. So Lions cover the 6.5 point spread. And I think that gives me just over, at least I've got the over under at 47.5. So just over.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that going on to the atmosphere, one thing I loved seeing was Megatron back in Detroit. I never thought I'd see that about a year ago or 2 years ago, based off of how things ended when he was there. Great to see him there. You had Sanders back there. You had Eminem in the crowd. Like, it looked electric. I would love to have been in that stadium last week, especially after pulling off the win the way they did. This is it's basically a Cinderella story, isn't it? Like, where they've come from, sorry. But everyone was taking the piss out of Dan Campbell when he started all of his little speeches that he was giving, and bit cheesy here and there. But I'll tell you what, he's created a tough team that will battle you till their last breath, and that's all you need. If I would much rather someone with lesser ability that's going to give you everything than someone like 84 who's got major attitude problems and causes more issues but has a lot more ability. They've got the right players there. I think they've got the right quarterback. Obviously, I don't know him, but he seems a very level-headed. He doesn't seem like a diva quarterback, like full of himself. And all of them look like that. Laporta seems that way. Amon-Ra St. Brown doesn't seem like your diva wide receiver. But man, do they get it to him a lot. He doesn't make many drops either, so I don't blame them for getting it to him a lot. This game, I think the Eagles made Tampa Bay look a bit better than what they are, because the Eagles have just been shocking. When I was thinking about my pick of picking the Eagles last week, I was trying to understand how I got to that. I haven't actually realized it yet. Baker Mayfield has shown us this year that he is an NFL level quarterback. I questioned it at times, many times over the last few years. But this year he's shown toughness. He's played injured. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks over the years, especially a few Chicago quarterbacks over the years, that wouldn't have done the same. Got a good defense. Mike Evans, I think Mike Evans will have a good game on Sunday, because he's playing against the Detroit secondary, which is weak. You mentioned how how Tampa Bay their secondary gave up some big plays against the Eagles. That was without AJ Brown as well. So imagine if he was playing. So I see this being both teams putting up a fair few points, but Detroit putting up more. I'm going with Detroit to win. I'm going with Detroit to cover. The over and did you say it's 6.5 points, the spread?
6.5.
6.5. So I see this being just about cover, 31-24. And I see Amon-Ra St. Brown and Mike Evans both going over.
Ooh.
I definitely like that. It's surprised Evans didn't last week, especially with Mayfield throwing for quite a few yards. But yeah, who was it? Was it Otton or something? I'd never even heard of him.
Yeah, the tight end Otton.
Yeah, yeah. Who are you? Go away. That's my threefold coming in if it weren't for you. But oh well. But now I'm going Detroit to win. Love watching them play. I want to see the coach more. Good luck to them. Good news story, and yeah, won't last much longer, admittedly, but it will last for this week anyway. Over to you, Paul.
So with this game, I'm going to keep it simple. I when I was thinking of it, just thought, let's not get carried away with the Bucs last week. Let's look at the whole regular season. And if you look at the whole regular season, I can't find an argument for the Bucs winning this game. It would have to be that the Lions have a massive letdown, like the relief of the first playoff win in 30 odd years. That's the only way I can see it happening. Like you guys said, the Lions secondary is trash, so that is a concern. But they can't run the ball, Tampa. And Detroit do stop the run. So it is literally all on Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and that passing game. But on the flip side, Detroit are well balanced, moving the ball. They can run, they can pass, they're creative with this offensive coordinator. And Jared Goff, like you guys said, is calm, and he's in a better situation than Baker Mayfield, because Tampa have to win this game with Baker's arm. Detroit don't. And I think that's the difference. And also that Detroit have more talent than Tampa. Let's just keep it real. Let's just look at the whole season. That, you know, if you gave Detroit this situation, divisional round, Tampa Bay, okay, yeah, I'll take that. Happy with that. And I think Detroit can kind of relax, maybe not too much, but just like take a breath. You've won a playoff game. You now like, you don't have to think of it was 1992. Now it was last week. So, because you should handle business this week, and then you've got a tougher test next week, but worry about next week when it comes. Take care of business this week. I believe they will. I think Tampa are a bit overmatched. The only way that Tampa can win this game, it's like I said, is with Baker, but I think Aiden Hutchinson will make Baker's life a bit more difficult. So I see Detroit 34, Tampa 20.
Okay.
So a bit, but yeah, and over the total.
Nice one. Okay, and now on to the final game, Sunday night game. Kansas City Chiefs at the Buffalo Bills. I think we've said this a few times over the last few years. Jay, who you got?
I mean, all I can really do for this matchup is smile, because it is Patrick Lavon Mahomes II versus Joshua Patrick Allen. I mean, I know it's not going to be exactly the way that we have come to know that matchup, but to me, this is still the two best quarterbacks of this current generation. I love watching this matchup. I'm not going to name names, but the amount of disrespect that I've heard over the course of this season, before this season, of this quarterback is better than Josh Allen, this quarterback is rivaling Patrick Mahomes. You could probably guess who I'm talking about. I don't want to hear it. These are the two cream of the crop quarterbacks in this league. These two teams have been through so much adversity this year. Two struggling offenses. So definitely have to give credit to both defenses, because they have stepped up. But it's just funny how all of that adversity, and once again we get to the playoffs, the NFL divisional round, and here we are with these two teams standing tall and confident and believing again. Just want to give some stats, because I think I just want to validate what I've just said. So the first one is for the Josh Allen turnover machine narrative crowd. He's played 9 playoff games, and the touchdown interception ratio, because I know everyone wants to hear about the interceptions, is 24-4. That is 20 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, and oddly, and I remember it against the Texans, a receiving touchdown. Mahomes has played 16 playoff games in his very short career, 3 of which being Super Bowls. He has a touchdown interception ratio 41-7. That's 36 passing and 5 rushing. This is the creme de la creme of quarterback play. I know everyone wants to say, you know, this is the new Brady Manning. No, this is Mahomes versus Josh Allen in its own right. We got one of the best playoff games ever in this round with these two teams in Kansas City a few years ago. Somehow, I don't think we're going to see a game go like that this time round. 2 struggling offenses, as I've said. If we look at the Chiefs, yep, Kelsey was a bit more productive against the Dolphins, they decided not really to double him. But he still, and I know the conditions were tough, he still had a couple of drops that we just don't expect from Travis Kelce. So the key weapon here is Rashee Rice. He has entered the room that is called Patrick Mahomes' trust tree. Over 100 yards, plenty of volume of targets. If I'm the Bills, these are the two that you have to stop. And obviously, you've got to worry about the run game with Pacheco, angry runner, the president of angry runs. On the Bills side, Diggs, again, like Kelce, kind of a struggling season. You never know what you're going to get with Gabriel Davis. It's kind of like this is almost the homecoming for him. The Chiefs, where he made his name with that 200 receiving yard game. James Cook has obviously been a huge part of this Joe Brady offense. You know, how many games has he had 100+ yard scrimmage since that takeover? And then, of course, you've got the two tight ends. You've got Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid. I think that the Chiefs have the cornerbacks to shut down these receivers. I think it's going to really come down to what James Cook can do, what Kincaid can do, what Dawson Knox can do, and obviously, ultimately, what sort of magical plays Josh Allen can come up with. Because this defense, and I just want to shout out Chris Jones, he was first team All-Pro. He's had a great year, but I personally didn't have him as first team. But Rob might be pleased to hear if he hasn't already heard it. There's a certain slot cornerback who was also named first team All-Pro. I am, of course, talking about Trent McDuffie, someone that caught Rob's eye in week 1 of this season. I see a defensive struggle. I think the Chiefs have to get the ball to Rice. I just don't know about Kelce. Has he still got it? The worry with the Bills, though, is that they were basically blowing out the Steelers and they let them hang around. And that game got quite close, I think, in the end. I feel like the Steelers' last drive, when the game was still alive, they just got a little bit conservative. But, you know, I can only see the television view at that point. Maybe the Bills had taken away everything that was there to be had, you know, on top, and it was just like, all we have is the checkdowns. Fair enough. Yeah, this I'm struggling. I'm sort of yeah. This is a difficult one.
It is.
I think you'd be a fool to bet against one Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. And I love Mahomes. I revere Mahomes. But I think I'm going to be that fool this week. I see a very, very close game. And I'm going to say Chiefs 21, Bills 23. So Chiefs cover the 2.5 point spread. I think that puts me just under. I've got the over-under at
45.5.
4.5, yeah. So I say Bills win. But I've got a message to the teams that get through this week. If the Chiefs and Mahomes win this game, watch out. Because this team will be ready to go all the way.
Wow. How do you follow that? Yeah, this game, it never disappoints, does it? Whether it's regular season, whether it's playoffs, It's always got storylines behind it. Yeah, where to start? You hit the nail on the head with last week. I thought Buffalo were going to run away with it. I said it before the game, and it looked like just before halftime they were about to go, what was it, 28-0 up, very likely. That changed quick. I think the Bills took the foot off the gas, thinking the game was over. Now, I think if they're playing the Chiefs, they hate the Chiefs. They're going to want to stomp them into the ground. They're not going to want to hold off at 17, 24, 31, whatever it may be. The Bills scare me because I want the Chiefs to win. Right. I was waiting all of the last 6 or 7 games, waiting for someone to beat the Bills because I didn't want them to be in the playoffs because I didn't want Mahomes to have to play against them if it got to that. And that's just out of respect to the Bills, just out of respect for their play. And I have nothing against Josh Allen. I just really like Mahomes. At the moment, I feel more comfortable that Allen will be able to make plays than Mahomes will. And I don't really know why. Maybe because of the drops from Kelsey and throughout the year drops from Tony and the false starts or like neutral zone infractions, whatever it may be. The Chiefs all year have beaten themselves, done a great job of beating themselves. My concern is there's only so much Mahomes can do. I called it in week 2, 3 or 4 that Rashee Rice was going to be one that they would just keep going to, because I always felt like he was going to be someone that had to come up trumps if they were going to get anywhere. And they were just like, right, we're going to get it to you. And if it doesn't work out, we're not going anywhere. No problem. And he's developed into a very good wide receiver. He's not anywhere near the finished article yet. He's still very rough around the edges. But he can be a difference maker. He's got the ability to do it. The Bills defense, very good alongside the Chiefs. Man, it's a horrible game. I really want to go with Chiefs because, like you mentioned, who bets against Mahomes? If you bet against Mahomes, you probably lost quite a lot of money over the last few years. It's 2.5 points to spread. It is in Buffalo for the first time this playoff meet. Obviously, Mahomes has always had that, let's say, 3-point advantage, as Vegas likes to give with the home team. So after all of that, I'm going to go with Kansas. I've got to go with it. I love their defense this year. Opportunistic, making plays, playing hard. I'm hoping, I'm believing Kelsey's going to pull it through when it matters. Rashee Rice will carry on. A big game last week, and all of the players in between, whether it be Mecole Hardman, Watson, will turn up when needed, because this is a rivalry game. 2 teams that respect each other. They might not like each other, but they clearly do respect each other. I'd say it's not the same as a Ravens-Steelers matchup where they just hate the shit out of each other and want to kill each other. I'm going to go with Kansas to win, and I'm going to go with how am I going to play this? I'm going to go with 23-24 Kansas. And that would mean the spread is also over, which I think it's gone up 1 point from when it opened. I think it opened at 44.5. It's now at 45.5. So, Paul, what are you going with?
So, Patrick Mahomes has never played a road playoff game except the Super Bowl. And Kansas City have been underdogs with Mahomes at quarterback 10 times. Against the spread, they are 8-1-1. Kansas have beaten Buffalo, knocked them out of the playoffs. What is it, 3 years running? But they were all in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of little narratives positives to this game. The previous versions of this game, the offenses were stacked. Now it's flipped, and it's running game, and it's problems at receiver. And for the Bills, in handling the Steelers last week, they had some injury problems. So Buffalo are banged up. They have been banged up this season, and they're more banged up now going to play the Chiefs. Is there such a thing as a team just having, like with the 49ers and the Cowboys, like they just have their number? They just beat them. Doesn't matter what situation. Doesn't matter if there's 13 seconds left on the clock. They're going to find a way to win that game. The Chiefs confuse me because I don't take a great deal out of the Dolphins game. I don't. This is a different matchup altogether. But I do look at their matchup in week 14. The Bills won that game by 3, but Kansas played a horrible game. They put up 2 touchdowns. They had the ball 10 times and put up 2 touchdowns. I don't see that happening this week. I think Kansas is going to score more points than the 17 they did on Buffalo in that previous matchup. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. I think that Rashid Rice has arrived just in time, and it would be typical Kansas City for them to discover a passing game now when it really, really matters. Miami, God bless Miami, like putting up all those points in October, and now they're at home, and Kansas City are going into Buffalo for a chance to go to the AFC title game.
None of us predicted that, did we, Paul? All 3 of us didn't predict that in October.
What, Kansas?
Miami. When it comes to January, that they'll continue with their high-octane offense. We all thought that would be correct, right? I'm being sarcastic. All of us called it, right? They will come January, it won't be the same.
It's the irony, though, that they lost that game to the Bills to put them in that position where they were playing in the cold. Like you beat the Bills, and you're at home.
Yeah. If ever a team that was designed to play at home in their conditions, it was the Miami Dolphins, and they literally froze on the stage in Kansas City. I mean, I almost felt bad for them. Like, just get them on the plane home. They do not look comfortable here. No. Just like want to be on the beach like next week, guys. Like, this is not fun. And yeah, they got whooped. They got their ass kicked. This is different. Both teams are comfortable with the conditions. This is a coin flip game, literally. I know it's a cliche, but it is a coin flip game. It could go completely either way. I'm leaning Kansas just because I think Buffalo, looking back at that game in week 14, the Kansas D coordinator did confuse Josh Allen quite a bit, and that's going to continue. He's an elite D coordinator. The Kansas City secondary is very good. They're going to stop Josh Allen. The way that Buffalo win this game is running the ball, and they have to be able to run up the middle because they're not an outside zone team. They have to run straight at the Chiefs. Miami couldn't run, but Miami are more an outside run team. So that's where I see this game. Can Buffalo run the ball up the middle on the Chiefs? I think Kansas have more ways to win this game than Buffalo, and I'm just going to edge the Chiefs. I'm going to say that Chiefs win a pretty tight game, 24-21, Kansas City.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, so that's our 4 picks for this week. Now let's just finish off with some bets. Paul, you had a couple of good picks last week. Both of them came in. Jay was very close with his. I got 1 out of 2. So, Jay, do you want to start us off with your first bet of the week?
Yep. I did come quite close, I felt, on those 2 specials. So I'm going to roll the dice again on them. Well, first of all, I just want to say my favourite spread is the Lions at -6.5. If there's any spread out there, that's the one I like most. Okay. All right, I'm going to go. I've got a few here, but I'm going to go with this one. It is a special. Jared Goff, Mahomes, CJ Stroud, and Michael Jordan Love, all over 250 passing yards, 13-2.
Okay.
And yeah, while I'm here, the second one, this is a longer shot, but I quite like it. Gus Edwards, Run CMC, Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Nico Collins, all to score a touchdown, 11-1.
Okay. Good stuff. All right. So for my first one, I've already called it. I'm going with the double of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Mike Evans to go over. That would get you 2.36 to 1. I would happily include the over, by the way. Let me just bring this up. Amon-Ra St. Brown 91.5, Evans is 69.5. I like them both to go over 100 in this game. I would also happily add McCaffrey over 92.5 yards rushing onto that, make it a treble, get yourself a bit more value. So yeah, that would be my first one. If looking at the game spreads, oh God, they're quite big spreads this week considering we're in the divisional round of the playoffs. But I would probably go with, you went with the Lions, didn't you, Jay? I'll go with the 49ers. Gotta go with the 49ers. I love the 49ers. I think the Packers have been, since Thanksgiving, basically, been on a you need to win to get into the playoffs. And yeah, 49ers are going to be fresh. And they're just a whole different beast to what Dallas were. So yeah, over to you, Paul.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to do teams and the spreads. I think the heavyweights advance. Ravens to cover 9.5, 49ers cover 9.5, and the Lions cover 6.5. Going to be brave, put it as a treble. Yeah, you could get backdoored, but I think form should hold out. So we'll ride with that.
Nice one. Good stuff. All right, guys. Well, that's it for another week. Next week we'll be into the championship weekend. Only 2 games to talk about. See you next week, and thanks for your time.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.